What is it that's holding you back, keeping you from becoming everything that God has created you to be, living your purpose and reaching your destiny? Is it self doubt, feeling that you don't measure up to others? Perhaps it's fear or lack of resources, offenses and challenges, maybe even past or current circumstances. Well, I want you to know that these are pathologies, diseases of the mind that negatively impact how you think and perceive things that invade your everyday life. You can overcome these peculiarities and become conquerors, living in the purpose that God has for your life. The Bible in Philippians 4:13 teaches us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Hello, I'm your coach Dee Johnson, and I'm going to share with you on how you can overcome these pathologies and be all that God created you to be on today's Watering the Seed. Hey seeds, welcome back to another episode of Watering the Seed. For those of you who've never been with us, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. Now, seeds, lean in for this one because today's topic isn't soft. No, it's surgical. We're going to talk about what happens when you willingly compromise your moral compass to be with someone who's already married. Not in a relationship, but married under a covenant, made an oath to God, the divine, to love, to honor, and to cherish. Now, before you flinch and say, Coach D, that's not me, stay with me because moral compromise doesn't always just happen in a moment. It's a slow fade that you don't always see coming. A few drips of justification, if you will, a friendly exchange of phone numbers, one innocent text here, one harmless lunch there, until you're knee deep in something that doesn't look anything like love. It looks more like you lying to a mirror you don't want to face. And I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to tell you the truth because truth is the only thing that cuts you free from the lies you've been wrapping around your neck. So let's be real. People who normally wear a badge of honor rarely wake up and say, I think I'll break my own integrity today, dishonor myself. No, it doesn't usually happen that way. Instead, it starts, with connection. Maybe they made you feel seen where you felt invisible, or maybe you made them feel seen. These things can go both ways. Maybe they offered attention when you were starving for it, or maybe you gave them the attention their insecurities needed. Maybe they carried the kind of confidence that drew you in. Maybe they fed you a false sense of security, knowing that you carried certain insecurities and what they were feeding you would never actually fill you. And seeds, understand this and understand this clearly. No one can fix your insecurities. That's inner work. That is personal responsibility. And when you work and when that work goes undone, it doesn't just affect how you feel or how you see yourself, it affects what you are willing to accept, excuse, and even pursue. And that is where the danger quietly enters the room because when insecurity meets opportunity, temptation doesn't look like destruction, it looks like validation. You see, there's a strange kind of rush in wanting, what's already claimed. Psychologists call it the scarcity effect. They call it the scarcity effect. We tend to assign higher value to what seems harder to get. Like designer shoes or clothes, even cars. We assume because it costs more or because fewer people can access these things that it must be more valuable. But the reality is this: it only looks and feels as good as the person wearing or driving it. You carry the value, not the tangible thing, not the clothes, not the shoes, not the car, but you. If you're insecure and you believe something external adds value to you, then what you're really wearing or driving is insecurity. That thing becomes your insecurity in motion. But when you're confident and rooted in your worth, you make that thing look good. You give it value, not the other way around. And the same is true in relationships. When you know your worth, you don't chase what's taken. You attract what's aligned. People assign a higher value to something that's seemingly harder to get, but spiritually though, spiritually, that's the bait on the hook. That is the bait on the hook. And here's the problem with that. That special feeling, that special feeling tricks you into thinking this situation is different. You start telling yourself, our love is rare. This is destiny and the wrong timeline. We were meant to be. You forget that stolen fruit always tastes sweet at first, but it's rotten at the core. Rotten. So let's go to scripture because here is where, we find the truth. Here is where we find the truth. Hebrews 13:4, it says marriage should be honored by all and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. See, this establishes that marriage is not just a legal contract, it's sacred. Defiling it is not only relational harm, it's spiritual violation. And in Exodus 20:14, it says, you shall not commit adultery. And that's very simple, very plainly put, very direct and non negotiable. This isn't about preference, it's about moral order. Another scripture, Proverbs 6:13, and there's a lot of scriptures that talk about the sanctity of marriage. But Proverbs 6:32, it says, but the man who commits adultery is an utter fool, for he destroys himself. Now notice, it says destroys himself, not just others. Adultery is self-harm. It's self-harm. It's self-harm dressed up as pleasure. Pleasure that leads you into a web of lies and fake narratives. Once you cross the line, you enter into a new job description. Yeah, a new job description. You become a storyteller. And not the kind that writes real novels, but the kind that has to craft believable excuses for why you were late or why you were there, why you're locking your phone and smiling at it at midnight. The codes you send, like calling them and letting the phone ring twice, then hanging up, to let them know, you're thinking about them. And then you get other people involved. Some people are innocent, some not so much. But you get them involved to justify this story you're authoring, to make it more believable, more authentic. But this connection, it's built on a big fat lie. And let me tell you this, the lies don't just go out to the world, they echo inward. You begin to tell yourself this was meant to be. They were getting along. They weren't getting along anyway. They're about to leave their spouse. And this is real love. Seeds, we have to stop treating lies like they're our friends, our roomies, because they're not. Lies are intruders. Go to scripture and find the one that speaks directly to that lie. Because there's some scripture there. Go and find the scripture that speaks directly to whatever that lie is and declare that truth over the lie. The scripture over the lie. Declare that scripture over the lie because the scripture is the truth. It's mental warfare. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with mental warfare. This is why I go to scripture because it frees us from the untruths that keep us bound to things that don't serve us but destroy us. Sometimes fast, sometimes slowly. But in any instance, these lies destroy us, these untruths. And deep down inside, your spirit knows the truth. If it was real, it wouldn't have to hide. It wouldn't need lies and codes. Okay? And the weight of those narratives, they drain you. You live in constant emotional debt, robbing your own peace to keep the fantasy alive. You start defending the indefensible. You even get angry when someone tells you the truth. A real friend will tell you the truth. But you get angry because the lie has become your comfort zone. And I talk about real friends versus, the dangers of people who only validate you in my podcast titled Truth Tellers, episode 12, parts 1 and 2. If you haven't listened, go back, check it out. Those who really truly love and care about you will tell you the truth. But again, you can't receive it because it disturbs your comfort zone. That false narrative you've created for yourself. In Romans 8 and 7, it speaks about the hostile mind. That mind that is irritated, by the truth and doesn't want to obey. It doesn't desire sanctity. That's what it is. It's resistant and it's rebellious. It's a mindset that has that you've gotten comfortable with. It's self-governing. It governs you. That self-governing mind, and you've gotten comfortable with that. And it will twist the truth to fit its agenda. Trust it. It will do that. It's a hostile mind. And when you operate in that mindset, your emotions are all over the place, causing you internal damage. You begin to feel the breakdown long before it actually happens. The fear of your lies being exposed, your heart being broken. And then you start going in even harder. More lies, more illusions, more emotional breakdown. The act itself was self-harm dressed up, as pleasure. 1 Corinthians 6 and 18, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. And this seed is huge. It's huge for violating one's self. Sexual compromise isn't just moral failure, it's internal damage. And it doesn't stop there. Once you become damaged goods and the married partner becomes damaged goods, whether you stay together or go your separate ways, that damage stays with you. And you take it to the next relationship. They call that baggage. And we'll talk about that just in a moment, shortly. But the damage is real. The damage is real. More lies, more illusions, trying to avoid the reality of what's happening. And reality's voice, it doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers when the married person cancels on you for their anniversary dinner with their spouse, when they have to schedule your rendezvous around their family time, their trips and events. When holidays roll around and you're on the outside looking in. Reality's voice whispers when the person married imagines, losing what they already have. When they picture their spouse walking away, their children asking questions they can't answer without breaking something sacred, if you want to call it that. Their name becoming a story told in rooms they can no longer enter. Reality's voice doesn't scream, it whispers. And in that moment, you both realize that you're living two lives, yet you're belonging fully to neither one of them. You don't belong fully to either one of those lives. This is not just about what you gain, it's about what you are willing to destroy. And once broken, some things do not return to their original form. Most of the time they don't. Most of the time they don't. They don't. They don't return to their original form. You know? Reality's voice, it whispers. It whispers when you realize that months or years have passed and you're still just the other option. And listen, don't allow yourself to be anyone's option in an intimate relationship, man or woman. the pursuer or the one being pursued. Because when you do, from that moment onward, you will always be an option for them. Always. Reality whispers. Reality whispers, but you avoid it because facing it would require action. And action means letting go. Letting go means grieving, and grief feels like loss. So you stay in that lie. But here's the kicker: staying doesn't stop the grief, it just spreads it over time. And in some cases, months, in other cases, years. But let's tell the truth: most people involved in marital affairs never end up together. And even if they do, the relationship began with the seed, a seed of betrayal. And seeds grow. Seeds grow into roots, and roots grow into trees. And when your tree is rooted in distrust, it will bear fruit that tastes just like the way it started: bitter and unsafe. Scripture tells us in James 1 and 14, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire. Then desire gives birth to sin, and sin gives birth to death. Seeds: desire mistaken for destiny leads to decay, not fulfillment. When you compromise your moral compass, you don't just lose trust in them, you've lost trust in yourself. You start questioning your own judgment. You find it harder to believe that someone can love you openly and fully because you've trained yourself to live on crumbs. This is that baggage that I mentioned earlier. This is the insecurity you carry into the next relationship. And if you get married without healing, you take this belief into your marriage, not feeling that someone can love you openly and fully because you've accepted crumbs. And for those of you who have already gotten married after having, a marital affair, deep down, you really don't trust love. You love the idea of being in love, but you don't really trust love. That feeling or thought in the back of your mind that says they may leave, or do they really love me? Is this fake? That's insecurity. And this is why it's that crumb effect. And here's the real loss: it's not just the relationship that ends, it's the part of you that believed you would never settle for less than respect. But you disrespected yourself. Okay, you've disrespected yourself by being with this married person. And that causes deep hurt, knowing that, you dishonored yourself. That's what it does. See, it's the hard but healing truth about this is your worth isn't found in being chosen in secret. It's found in being honored in the light. In the light, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. This is your healing scripture, okay? Restoration after failure, not condemnation. We're not here to condemn you for anything because none of us are perfect. Life happens and it happens to all of us. But you have to be willing to restore, okay? Forgive yourself and others and move forward in clarity, in peace, in truth. So if you're in this situation, my prayer for you is that you take your compass back, calibrate it, adjust it, rectify it, point it towards peace. Tell the truth to yourself first. Step away from what devalues you, even if it leaves you standing alone for a season. You'll be okay. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. This is reinforcement for protecting your alignment, not just your emotions. Because solitude is safer than shared dishonor. because your future, it deserves an unbroken you. And because love built on a lie will never be able to hold your emotion. It won't be able to hold it. It won't be able to hold your soul. Okay? So now that we've unpacked what happens when you compromise your moral compass to be with someone already married, some of you may be asking, well, coach, what about when they do leave their spouse or the spouse leaves them? Hmm. Mm. What about that moment you've been telling yourself is the goal, huh? That fantasy ending where they finally leave their spouse and you end up together. Hmm. What about that? Well, for some, that day does actually come. And I break that down in part 2 of the cost of compromise. Confusing desire for destiny. When the cheating spouse lands in your arms. So tune in next week and let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Seeds, thank you for joining me today. I really hope this message reaches those of you whom, it was meant. And those that are not, or have not been in a situation of this caliber, I pray that you don't. But if you are faced with it, or if you're tempted by it, just remember this: honor your worth above someone else's convenience because your heart is worth the truth. Your heart is worth the truth. Until next time, seeds, live your life in the light, not in secrecy. Now go and water that seed.